Hello, thank you for your purchase of Aimfront Bugout replacement scales. Let's get right into it. Let's start removing the pocket clip screws. These are going to be T6 screws. All the screws on the body will be T6 screws, and the pivot screw will be a T10 Torx screw. The pocket clip screws are a different length, so keep them separated from the main body screws. Now we're going to remove the main body screws. You want to start with the screws on the same side as the T10 Torx screw of the pivot. After we're through removing the body screws, now we'll take our T10 driver and remove the pivot screw. As soon as the pivot screw is removed, we'll take the matching Aimfront scale and put it in place. Sometimes you have to align it to make sure it aligns with the standoffs, and sometimes you'll even hear it kind of click into place. Make sure everything's flush. As soon as everything's flush, start inserting the T6 Torx screws from the body. Here I'm just snugging up all the screws in the body. There'll be a total of 4 of them. After I snug them up, I will back them off approximately 1/8 to 1/4 turn. Now we take the knife and we flip it over and we remove the screws, the body screws, from the other side. After we've completed removing the screws from this side, we're going to remove the pivot. And to do this, we're going to depress the axis lock slightly, taking a little bit of tension off the pivot. And then we'll use our driver and we'll push our pivot all the way through, leaving our driver in place. This will maintain the location of the lock assembly as it relates to the pivot hole. Now we'll remove the scale, place it out of the way, and we'll replace it with the Aimfront scale, making sure to align it. Again, sometimes it will snap into place. Just make sure everything's flush and lined up like it is in the video. Then we'll take our center T6 Torx screw and we'll snug it up, and then we'll just back it off slightly. After this, we're going to pull back on the axis lock very slightly, and now we'll take the end of our driver and we'll make sure that all the washers and everything is aligned in that bore so the pivot can freely move through. Right here I'm identifying the flat on top of the pivot. That flat will align with the top of the knife, and you may have to rotate it slightly clockwise and counterclockwise as you're pushing it in, and you'll kind of feel it snap its way into place. If you meet a lot of resistance, push the pivot back out with the driver and just repeat until you can get everything aligned. Here I'm just snugging up the T10 screw with the T10 Torx driver, and I'll just screw everything together and I'll just make sure it's snug. I'll be backing this off in the near future. Now we'll replace the remaining screws. As we did with the other side, we'll snug up all the screws and then we'll back them off approximately 1/8 to 1/4 of a turn. Okay, here I'm backing off the pivot screw, and the reason I'm doing this is I'm going to make sure the blade alignment is perfectly centered. I can kind of rack the scales side to side to affect the blade centering. Once I get it perfectly centered, I can snug up the pivot screw. After I've snugged up the pivot screw, I can go and tighten down all the body screws. Right now, people are usually asking, do I put any thread locker in? For the body screws, you can, if you feel the need to, I haven't had issues with them coming loose, but you certainly could use a Loctite 242, which would be the blue Loctite, or Loctite 222, which would be the purple Loctite. After I snug up the body screws, then I'll set up to mount the pocket clip. With the pocket clip, I like to put the screws in the pocket clip first, and then it allows me to kind of hold them in place. Then I line them over the holes and snug them down. And you can use thread locker on these as well. After we tighten down the pocket clip, we'll adjust the blade tension and also make sure that our centering is still perfect. Okay, after confirming that the blade is centered, I'm going to open and close the blade a few times just to make sure everything is seated. I'll also wiggle it side to side to see if the blade is loose. If it is a little loose, I'll snug it down just like I do here in the video. And I want it to be where it opens and closes freely and there's minimal to no blade wiggle kind of side to side. And that's what I'm trying to achieve here. Again, this is personal preference, so adjust it accordingly. And that's it. After you get that dialed in, your Aimfront scales have been assembled. We are super grateful and humbled that you purchased our products. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to us via email. And again, thank you for your purchase and have a great day.